Today I'm going to run the risk of sounding a little bit arrogant. And I'm going to do it for a very specific purpose, which I hope will make sense to you, because the topic of our podcast this week are lessons I wish I had learned sooner and the difference it would have made in my life. And today I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to talk about the very first time I remember learning that lesson and the way I think it impacted my life, and hopefully it'll inspire you. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and I want to talk to you about my childhood dream of becoming a professional baseball player. So I was a very talented baseball player. I grew up playing baseball throughout my childhood and spent my high school years in a place called Franklin, Massachusetts. And I never really realized how good I was, in fact, how great I was at baseball. I didn't realize it until baseball was taken from me. When I got to college, I played baseball for a little while, and then I got an injury. My family life was a mess, and I ended up changing courses and going into the field of psychology, which I don't regret, by the way. I don't regret. But I didn't really realize how good I was at baseball until I moved from Franklin, Massachusetts, and started playing baseball around other people. I didn't really realize how good I was at this sport until I was around people that are kind of outside of my bubble. And I look back and I think, and this is almost hard to admit, but one of the things that people talk about very often about my life currently in my professional life is my work ethic. People that know me, they always talk about, like, you're always working and you work so hard and you're so dedicated. The reason why that is, and I don't know if I've ever said this publicly or not, but the reason why that is because growing up, I never really understood how good of a catcher I was. I didn't really get it until I started playing adult baseball leagues here in Texas. Like, there are leagues where, like, former professional players, college players, minor league players will play. And I was one of the better players, in fact, one of the better catchers, that's the position I played, in these leagues. And the way that impacted my youth is without realizing how good or talented I was at this sport, I didn't maximize it by, whenever you compare talent with work ethic, you have the potential for greatness. And I didn't put forth enough work. When people ask me, like, why didn't you go professional as a baseball player? The easy answer is I got injured and then I had some family issues and I just had to focus on other things. But the vulnerable truth is I did not work hard enough. The vulnerable truth is I did not put myself in a position to be great through my work ethic. The real reason I didn't do that was because I didn't realize the level of talent that I had and how that could have changed my life. And looking back, I wish I had. So by the time I learned that lesson, I was in the field of psychology and I just thought, I'm not going to squander another talent or another opportunity. Like, I'm not going to lose out on another thing that could potentially make me really successful and have a fulfilled life. So when I went into the field of psychotherapy, I decided I'm going to give it everything I have so I can maximize my talent. Whether I'm great at this or not, whatever, my goal, my initiative is to give it everything I have to take advantage of this opportunity. Because again, one of the greatest things ever is when you match talent with work ethic. That's when you have the potential to really create amazing, amazing things. I remember being in my mid-20s, playing in these adult baseball leagues. We often refer to them as semi-pro baseball leagues. And I remember thinking, like, I wish I know now in my mid-20s, I wish I knew this when I was 15, 16 years old. Because I'm very confident I would have become a professional baseball player. Now, I don't say that with a deep sense of regret because I love my life now and I love the career I have now. And who knows, had I done all those things, maybe I wouldn't have gone down this path eventually. But I do say it to say the life lesson there is be aware of your talents and your strengths, because that gives you the opportunity to work hard and maximize those talents and strengths. And I absolutely think too often we don't take advantage of our talents and strengths because we're often not aware of them. We live in a world where we're so much more acutely aware of our flaws than our strengths, and I at least would love to do my small part of reversing that, and that's what this episode is. So I want you to take a minute and just reflect on what lessons do you wish you had learned earlier and how would it have impacted your life. You just heard my story, but I'm curious what you would notice as you look at your own life. I love you guys, man. Thank you so much for being here and listening to this episode. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Please continue to share this podcast on your social media platforms. You can do that on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever. I appreciate the support. Send it to at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever it is you love listening to podcasts, and become a Patreon subscriber. There's really amazing bonus content every week we release just to the Patreon subscribers. I appreciate you guys so very much, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Today I'm going to be a little bit, or maybe even a lot of bit, like hokey, even silly in a kind of sentimental way, as I really want to inspire you today. I want to share a lesson that I wish I had known sooner in my professional life, in my business, in the hopes that it inspires you in a major way in your life. Not just in your business or in your work and your career, but in your life itself. So welcome back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons that I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and this week we're talking about lessons that I wish I had learned sooner. And there's one lesson that stands out from my work life and from my career that I really, really wish I had learned sooner. You know, when I went to graduate school, just like everybody else, like I had dreams as a kid of being like rich and famous and successful and a professional athlete and a famous actor and all those things. But by the time I went to graduate school, I kind of learned to like minimize my hopes and dreams, as we do through adulthood. And I really was thinking, I just want to be a helpful clinician. I remember I used to tell people that. I just want to be a helpful professional. And to some degree, I still have that dream. But if I'm being super honest, the biggest reason I had that dream was because, like, I don't know that I knew anything else was possible. Like, life had been hard, and you learn that some dreams are hard to make come true, and all this stuff that happens through your discovery that life can be challenging. But I think the lesson that I learned, and I'm going to tell you how I learned it, is that when you pursue your passion, what can be accomplished is truly limitless. Because one of the things I learned in graduate school was I was, like, built for this. Like, I'd found myself in a career that was literally like I was made to do this kind of work. For some reason, I could do this kind of work better than anyone else could do this kind of work. And I don't say that arrogantly. I mean, I just, you know, when you're in school, one of the students in the program stands out, and for me, it was me. My clients responded to me differently than they responded to anybody else. The way they talked to me, the outcomes they achieved, it was just different. And I remember thinking, like, knowing that and knowing, like, wow, this is great and I'm enjoying this and this is good for me and seemingly good for my clients. And I started, like, setting these goals. Like, when I get my graduate degree, I just want to get a job at an agency. And then I did that. And then when I worked in an agency, I was dissatisfied and I just want to have a private practice. And I did that. And then I wanted to reach more people. So I wrote a book. And then I figured out how to use, like, social media and deliver online courses. And over the course of time, I was able to, like, dream until ultimately I became, like, the leading, loudest voice in this field and creating a significant amount of change and disruption. And I wish I had known in the very beginning that I could have dreamed these things before. I wish I had known that, like, when you're doing something that you're meant for, that you're passionate about, that you're talented in, anything you're dreaming can be achieved literally in a limitless way. I wish I had known that. And I think about all the people that are held back by not dreaming big enough because they're afraid they won't come true. They're held back by their own limited beliefs. I mean, that was my case, being held back by my own limited beliefs. But I have come as far in the field of solution-focused brief therapy anyone has ever come. Literally, no one has ever achieved the things that I've achieved in the field of solution-focused brief therapy, and I'm only just getting started. There's so much more for me to do. And had I just stepped into this truth earlier, I would have avoided many heartaches, many mistakes, many troubles. I would have just kind of gotten here sooner and walked through the gauntlet sooner. And it just makes me think, like, how many of you are being held back by your limited beliefs, by your hesitations, by your fears, by your anxieties, instead of just stepping into your truth? So I want to encourage you to, like, when you're doing something that your heart is in, that you're passionate about, that you believe in, and that you're good at, I want you to dream in the most limitless way possible. And I hope my life is an example of that for you. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for listening. Please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person in your personal life that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And also, don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever it is you enjoy listening to podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever your favorite place is. And you can also become a Patreon subscriber. So head on over to Patreon and get access to bonus content every week. I love you so much. See you tomorrow. Today I'm going to tell you the number one lesson that I wish everyone learned sooner. I wish everyone learned as early as possible. I'm going to tell you this because I want it to inspire your life, because I think it's a lesson that would truly make a difference in everyone who kind of understands it and wraps it around their mind. So I want to welcome you back to the aha moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. Of course, I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and here's the thing. There are two things, actually, that I'm going to share today that I wish every single person would learn as soon as humanly possible. So the first thing is quite simply, hard work is the core of success, because it's the only variable in the pyramid of success. It's the only variable that you have control over. And it's the luckiest people I know tend to also be the hardest working people I know. And the reason why this is such an important lesson is because once you understand that work ethic is something I can control and the number one variable in the pathway towards success, then you now have control over how much success you're able to achieve or not. You now have control over how lucky your life gets or not. We tend to treat luck as if it's this variable that we have no influence over, but the truth is the hardest working people also have a tendency to be the luckiest people. So if you want to be successful and if you want to be lucky, I want you to wrap your mind around the idea that hard work leads to more positive circumstances, which we tend to call luck, and increases the likelihood of me to be successful. So that's thing number one. Now, thing number two is going to be kind of less popular because we're all tired of talking about the pandemic, but I can't think of a better example to demonstrate the second thing that I wish people had learned sooner in their lives, and that is the importance of being kind to other people. One thing I will never understand for as long as I live is why in the early part of 2020, when we were told to stay home, when we were told to socially distance, and we were told to wear masks, why we were so resistant to those things. I'm talking about even before the vaccine, where people were like, I don't want to put some chemical in my body. But when we were originally told, stay home, wear masks, and socially distance when you have to go out, we didn't do it. And we were resistant as a society. And as a consequence, we're now 2.5 years dealing with this pandemic. And I read a story where Dr. Anthony Fauci said we're going to be dealing with COVID for years to come. He does not have a positive outlook on our ability to get on the other side of this disease. Now, I know this has been politicized, and some of you people are probably rolling your eyes or even turning off the podcast, and that's fine. I don't care. But the truth is, we did not behave in a communal way, in a way that we should take care of our neighbors. Because I would wear a mask for the rest of my life, and it looks like I might, actually. Because there are people with compromised immune systems, there are people with health issues that make them more at risk of experiencing devastating consequences of having COVID. And we need to take care of our neighbors. It's not just about us. And if you think about that, some of the best times I remember in my life as a child, it's when I was doing something for and with other people. It just feels good. And it makes the world we live in better. It makes the world we live in safer. And it makes the world we live in more nurturing. And I cannot think of anything more awesome than that. I know that a lot of people don't like talking about COVID. We have these passionate and politicized opinions, but we should never be politicized against helping other people. And that's the second lesson, is when you behave in a way that takes care of your neighbors, the world is just a better place. When I was a kid, me and my best friend Kyle would walk around the neighborhood with a shovel. Each of us had a shovel. And we would go to elderly people's homes and we would say, "Can I shovel your driveway?" during the winter when we had snowstorms in Massachusetts. We'd say, can I shovel your driveway? And the elderly people would say yes, and they would come and give us $5 and $10. And now it's 25 years later. I don't remember which houses gave how much money, but to this day, I can still remember those older people smiling at Kyle and I can still tell you which houses gave us hot chocolate as we did this task. So what does that tell you? That the monetary value didn't matter as much as the impact. I remember the smiles and hot chocolate. I have no idea how much money I got from which house, or even if one house paid us or not. But I remember the smiles on those people's faces, and I remember the hot chocolate. So think about that. And I want you to apply those lessons in your life. Take care of your neighbors and understand that hard work is the only variable on the path of success that you have control over. And those people who work hard tend to get luckier. And I want you to have as much success as you can possibly have in your life because I love you. So thanks for being here today. Please, I need your help to reach even more people. So please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever you enjoy listening to your podcast, Apple, Google, Simplecast, Spotify, wherever. And become a Patreon supporter and get bonus material every week. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. If you know me, you know that sports were a big part of my life as a child. And going into my 20s and 30s, like, sports are a big part of my life. I'm less of a sports fan now because of how busy my life is. But for most of my life, I was a huge sports fan. In the early part of my life, I was a huge sports player. And there is one massive lesson that I learned from playing sports that impacts my daily life now. And in today's episode of this podcast, I'm going to share it with you. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. I'm your host, Elliott Connie, and this might be the biggest lesson I've ever learned in life at all. And it's certainly the lesson that pays the biggest dividends and still to this day affects me every single day. So I want to tell you how I learned this lesson. I started playing baseball when I was 10 years old. I moved and lived next to a guy who played baseball, or kid who played baseball. They encouraged me to go try out, and I tried out for Little League when I was 10 years old, and I did not make it. And they put me in the level before Little League. In this area, it was called Farm League. And I played in Farm League and wasn't very good, but it was one of those things where I got like better and better and better. The next year, I was 11 years old, and I made it into Little League. I got better and better and better. And then the following year, when I was 12, I was the very best player on my team. I was one of the very best players in the league, and I led my team to the championship of the league. And here's where it gets interesting, where I learned an incredibly valuable lesson. In spite of me being the best player on my team that won the championship and one of the best players in the league, I was not selected for the All-Star team. And the All-Star team was a really big deal because it meant you could spend your summer traveling throughout New England playing baseball and playing in tournaments. If you don't make the All-Star team, you got to figure out what you're going to do with yourself all summer. So this was a big deal, and I was not selected. And it hurt. It hurt really bad. Like, I can remember the day I found out that I did not make the team, I was crushed. One of the coaches actually came to my house to console me. Like, I was devastated. I was the best player in the league. Team won a championship, best player on that team. And they did not pick me to be on the traveling summer team. The next year, that hurt drove and fueled me. The next year, I started saying, I want to be so good that they cannot slight me. And I came up with this phrase when I was 12 years old: leave no doubt. So when I was going from the ages 12 to 13, I started working out. I started running. I was reading books about how to become a better baseball player. I was watching videos. I was obsessing about achieving my goal because I never again wanted to feel that feeling, and I never again wanted to miss out on playing in the traveling summer team. So when I was 13, I came out like gangbusters, and I was 10 times a better player at 13 than I was at 12, and did make it onto the summer traveling team. And I made it onto the summer traveling team when I was 13, 14, 15. And then when I was 16 and I aged out of that league, I made it into a new league, and I was a top tier player the rest of my life. And the lesson that I learned is you have to outwork injustices. You have to outwork unfairnesses. And as a solution-focused therapist, I had to deploy that lesson because I encountered professionals that wanted to unjustly hold me back. And it doesn't make me pout. What it does is it makes me angry. And that anger fuels my work ethic. And I work to leave no doubt. So now, the people who had worked so hard in my professional life to hold me down, they're all like retiring or gone or irrelevant. And I'm currently running the largest training organization in the entire field of solution-focused brief therapy. And that comes from the lesson I learned when I was 12 years old. Sometimes unfair things happen, and you have to outwork that unfairness. You have to give it everything you have to make sure that you make it as hard as humanly possible for people to slight you. And I still deploy that lesson to this day. It fuels my work ethic now. It fuels what I do. And it's funny, like it's so unexpected because when I was 12, I never would have thought that this would impact me for the rest of my life, but it most certainly has. So I want you to think about some unexpected lesson that you learned in your youth through sports or theater or whatever it was you were doing that still impacts your life to this day. Thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate your time and that you take the time to listen to this podcast. Please share this on your social media platforms. I really need your help to reach more people, and I can't do that without you. So please share this podcast on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing this message today. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts, Apple, Simplecast, Spotify, Google, doesn't matter, wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. And also become a Patreon subscriber where there is bonus content every week. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Love you. Since this week we've been talking about lessons that I wish I had learned earlier, one really, really important lesson is something I haven't talked about yet. And I think it's crucial. I think it's critical. I think it's important. And I experienced it the other day while talking to a colleague and friend, and I want to share it with you in today's episode. So welcome back to the Aha Moments, where every day I share the lessons I've learned in my work as a psychotherapist and in my life to inspire you to live your very best life. So, as you know, I'm a psychotherapist and I practice something called solution-focused brief therapy, and I am on the board of an organization called the Solution-Focused Brief Therapy Association. I serve as the vice president. Now, recently, we're having a hectic year. We've had to get a lot of stuff done. We're working to make the organization more inclusive. This is the organization that attempted to blackball me. They had racists and bigots on the board in the past. Through a few tips and turns and swerves, they have put me on the board, and me and a great group of people are working to make this organization more appropriate. And it's made it for a hectic year. And someone criticized the work that this board is doing. And they did it in a pretty cowardice way. They did it in a don't use my name kind of a way, emailed the president of the board. And I decided to call the president, and we had a wonderful conversation. The president and I had a really, really long talk. Her name's Amanda. And she talked about the criticism that came, and I responded to the president. I told Amanda, I think the person criticizing is wrong and wrong for these reasons. And then Amanda, she demonstrated the skill that I think is incredibly important, and that is the skill of being open to new information and being open to learning lessons. And so I explained to her, and I won't go into detail because not everybody listening to this is a solution-focused therapist, and it really doesn't matter to the point. But someone criticized the work of the board. I explained to them why I stand behind the work of the board, and Amanda said, I hadn't heard it explained that way. It completely changes the way that I view this particular topic, And oh my gosh, now going forward, I have a different understanding. And it made me respect Amanda a lot more. It made me more comfortable around Amanda because Amanda just demonstrated the really, really important skill of taking on new information and allowing it to change your mind and impact what you think and how you think it. Too often, we're so rigid in our thinking that we're not open to new information. And I think that's not only is it not a helpful way to live, but it's also dangerous. It's also really, really dangerous. You know, talking about racism, I've had people tell me, like literally, I was in college, right? The first time this is when I realized that some people's thinking is so rigid that they can't move. And I was in college and I met this guy from a rural area. I actually don't remember his name, but anyway, and he told me that he doesn't think black people can succeed in college. And I was like, but bro, I'm in college and succeeding. Does this new data not influence your thinking? Because no matter what your thinking is, you can find an excuse to keep thinking it. Like it's really easy for that person to be like, yeah, but you're an exception. It's really easy for that person to just think whatever they think and find a reason or an excuse to continue to think it. But when you can truly be open to new data and allow it to influence how you're thinking and what you're thinking, that is life-changing. That is remarkable. And that is a skill that I wish more people had. To be honest with you, when I reached out to Amanda, I've only served on this board with Amanda for about a year. I haven't had the opportunity to get super close to her. But with everything going on, I thought it was a good idea that, the president and vice president have a chat. I ended up getting off the phone with Amanda with an infinitely higher level of respect for her and infinitely more positive thoughts about her and higher level and ability to trust her because she demonstrated this incredibly valuable skill. It's really easy and even comfortable to keep thinking what you were thinking. It takes a level of backbone and courage to take on new thoughts and carry those new thoughts forward and create a new reality. So I hope all of you are out there and you make yourself available to new information. You make yourself available to new realities because it'll change the lives of you and the people around you. And I think that's a wonderful way to live life. So thank you guys for being here so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I certainly enjoyed making it for you. I love you guys so much, and that's what drives my work. So please share my content on your social media platforms or with at least one person that you think could benefit from hearing the messages of this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe. You can do that wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. You can do that where you're listening to podcasts now, whether it's Simplecast, Apple, Google, Spotify, doesn't matter, wherever you are. And don't forget to become a Patreon subscriber. There's bonus material every week for my Patreon subscribers. See you on Monday.